you, Tomo.
Not at all. Not at all.
So this is incredible because I don't really know you, and I'm going to press record right now. I don't really know you. I just know you from this class we're taking, and
Correct.
yeah. So my gosh, I don't know much about you, but what are you working on right now?
So right now, what I'm working on is basically a web series. I'm in post for a web series that I made when the pandemic hit, called Multiverse Corporation. I released a few episodes, but then I decided to wait and do the rest of it and do all the post work because I want to send it out to some festivals and things like that. And doing that, working on the podcast. I had to take a break from the podcast. Well, we had a big break from the podcast because schedules got screwed up and I had some like health concerns I had to take care of as well. But my podcast is called What's Going On Here. We review basically adult beverages, beers mostly. But the way we started the podcast was we would take the middle 20 minutes of a TV show or a movie that nobody's ever heard of, preferably foreign language, on Netflix, and then we turn off all the dubbing and then watch the middle 20 minutes and then try to figure out what's going on.
That's great. That's a great idea.
A lot of shenanigans, a lot of silliness. So, that's kind of where we're at. So I'm working on that as well. And, doing my acting stuff, basically, trying to book gigs. The latest one was a Netflix project that I booked that was posted on the Netflix YouTube channel for short films.
Which one?
It's called I Wish I Could Tell You More, I believe it's called. It was one of the first ones out, and they had like, not huge numbers, but like, for a short film on YouTube for Netflix, they had 2,000 views in the first day, that kind of, nice. So, it wasn't huge, but it was a fun experience. Everybody was great. Filmed it at Archway Studios in Astoria, Queens, or something like that. So that was fun. So that's basically what I'm working on, and script writing. Trying to write a bunch of scripts. Working on a few pilot ideas, some ideas. I'm wondering whether it should be a movie or a pilot, but I'm gearing towards like TV series because they're kind of rich worlds, lots of stuff going on. So, yeah.
Well, about that one on Netflix, what was that about?
That was a good one. That was actually a pandemic oriented film, basically about a therapist who's trying to basically work with patients who are just going through all kinds of stress because of the pandemic. I played an older immigrant whose store got shut down that's been in the family for like some 79 years or something like that. And then it's basically little snippets of the therapist talking to the various patients. And she's trying to hold her own stuff together. She has a therapist as well. And you see her like in the bathroom and she's popping pills and trying to like retain her sanity and stuff like that. So it was like I said, a fun little movie. A little bit, it kind of captured the stress of the pandemic when it first happened, Yeah.
Well, especially where you are, because you're in New Jersey, right?
Yeah. New Jersey, New York. I mean, New York City, when it first got hit, was really bad. And it's one of these esoteric things. It's kind of like the floods in Kentucky. You see it on TV and you're like, oh my God, it's horrible. But you don't really experience it unless you're there. And some of the hospitals in Queens had basically 18-wheelers that were just basically body trucks. And these kids all have PTSD because they would hear these thumps in the middle of the night, and that's, dead bodies being dropped off. So the way this movie the movie captured the stress of that period really well, because nobody knew anything, everybody was freaking out. We're wiping down mail, wiping down packages, wiping down groceries. It was what's happening. So, yeah.
A few people from that area have told me about the trucks. It sounds like the end of the world. It sounds like, we're back in medieval Europe or something.
It was a little bit like Bring Out Your Dead. It was a little bit like that. I mean, I have a friend who lives in uptown Manhattan, and she had 7 neighbors die on that first wave. In a 6-story apartment building. So that's, probably 10, if not 15% of the people in the building that died because of this. And, it's not like her place was the only one. So.
And did you stay in that area the entire time? Or are you one of those people that went to upstate New York?
No. I mean, where I live in New Jersey, I'm kind of blessed that way, because where I am in New Jersey is suburban enough that it's almost, if I drive 15 minutes, it turns into rural, just about. But it's suburban enough where I have a big piece of property around my house. And at the same time, I'm 8 minutes from the George Washington Bridge. And I catch the express bus in my town, and I'm at Port Authority, middle of Manhattan, in 30 minutes.
Do you often go to Manhattan?
Yeah, for gigs all the time. I mean, I used to do improv comedy, so it was like once a week we were just, working on stuff, and then at least once a month we were performing, once or twice a month. So, when the pandemic hit, all of that stopped for a good year. In-person auditions, all of it just kind of came to a screeching halt. And I mean, this, in a way, and everybody hates like doing everything on Zoom, and self-tapes, but in a way it's better for everybody because you're kind of saving time. It's just not the same as not performing live in front of people, especially if you're a performer. It's kind of like, oh, this sucks. It's kind of like DJ Nice did a wonderful thing with the DJ parties, right? And when I was a young man, I used to DJ too. And that energy of being in the room and spinning the records, and I know you were talking about in class, it was the height of house music when I was DJing. So I had all the house records. I was buying the imports from the UK, what were the name? The twins from Detroit. They had a big hit. I forget, Good Life.
I love that song. I just listened to it today at work. I listened to it several times a week to get me in the mood to write, to work on the pilot. Yeah.
I mean, so much of that like early house music was just so, the Jungle Brothers when they came out, all of that. I used to DJ that. So like the energy of it, when you put on a good record and the whole just place hypes up, I can only imagine what these guys like, what are the names? I forget, Skrillex and these guys, when they do it to a full stadium, I used to do it to, a wedding hall with 100 people, and the energy was incredible. I can't even imagine like with 15, 20, 30,000 people in front of you all just jamming to it, So it's.
Were you doing that in New York?
Yeah, New York.
When was that?
Back in the late 80s, early 90s.
Oh, okay. The last time I was in New York was in the 90s when my friend got married. That's it. I've not been back there, but I used to go to New York in the late 80s and early 90s, and it was so different than it is now. I cannot get over it.
Oh, it actually happened like almost like in a 2-year period. Because when I was a kid in New York City, I remember I had to go to the city for some reason. I was going by myself. I was a little scrawny kid. I was maybe 15, 16 years old. It was cold. I don't know if I had a doctor's appointment or something. And I had to make a switch in the train at Times Square. And, city kids, very different than suburban kids who just kind of, you know where you're going. It's kind of the law of the jungle. You're not making eye contact unless you want trouble or you're, selling stuff. You just don't make eye contact.
Especially for the Times Square back then.
Times Square back then was nothing but porn theaters, drug dealers, and hookers. Literally. That's it. And I remember thinking, okay, I got to get up onto the surface. I got to get out the subway. I got to walk like a block or two across Times Square to get to the other subway line. All right, I'm not going to make any contact. I'm just going to keep my head down, have my hoodie up above my head. And if anything happens, I'm going to run to the military recruitment station, which was always there, like since World War II, and hopefully those guys take mercy on me. And that was my plan. I just went across, of course, being a 15-year-old kid, it was just like, I can't help but look at the porn theaters like, oh, that girl looks nice, that stupid stuff. But at the same time, I'm trying not to get myself killed or anything like that, and then run across. And then I remember sophomore year of college, junior year of college, I went to pick up my mom at work, and she worked off of Park Avenue. So I had to drive through Times Square. And it was already Disneyfied.
Yeah.
And I remember going, what the hell?
Yeah.
And people are walking around with these like Nikon cameras with the lenses, these like 12-inch lenses that cost, $8,000 just at 8 at night. And I was just like, what's happening? Right, my mind was completely blown. Completely blown.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was a kid in New York City in the 70s, which was even worse, and to be in some of these neighborhoods, like for some of these acting things, like, it's a gathering, a get together, something. I remember I was in the Bowery, and my dad used to work in the city. He used to work in Manhattan all his, for years in the 70s. And the Bowery was a place that in the daytime, he went with 2 of his guys to watch his back because they had to go pick up parts or something.
Wait, sorry, which part is the Bowery in Manhattan?
Bowery is lower Manhattan, like towards the east side. But because this was just, just hobos and homeless people and just guys just down on their luck, and just everybody was an opportunist because New York City was terrible in the 70s. And I remember walking out the club, bar where this event was. It was like a backstage event or something. And, I had a good time, said goodbye to the people I knew, and I'm walking out. And I'm walking to my car and I look across the street and there's a young lady, probably early 20s. She's got a miniskirt dress that's silver sequin. And she's just, high heels. She looks great, but she's just walking down the street without the care in the world, 12:30 at night. And I'm looking at that and I'm thinking like, I'm on Bowery. 40 years ago, this place was in the middle of the day, but big, grown, strong men wouldn't do this and walk that casually down this street. And I was just like, yeah, times have changed.
Well, what's it like now?
It's everything's gentrified. They were talking with COVID about like all this crime and how crimes go through the roof and everything. Now, I'm a grown guy. I'm not a small guy. I'm not a huge guy, but generally nobody bothers me. At least I haven't been bothered, all these years I've been doing the acting. It's fine. I mean, there's little restaurants. It's kind of a double-edged sword. On one hand, I miss all the characters and all the solid New York that it used to be. But at the same time, I'm enjoying the fact that when I go to my car, it hasn't been broken into. I'm enjoying the fact that I could just walk into a restaurant and walk out and not get billy clubbed on the back of the head and wake up in an alley somewhere with like my clothes missing or something. So it's, it's definitely a change.
Because there were stories coming out during COVID about New York and they're like, oh, there are all these people and they're attacking people on the Upper West Side. Like, what was that about?
Well, you know what? I don't know. I didn't see any of it, but I'm guessing part of it just has to do with the fact, the way the country's been going, it's the haves have a lot more and the have-nots have a lot less. And people get frustrated and they see, and they're down on their luck and COVID hit and they lost their jobs. And, it really bothers me to see these ads like, oh, these 6 gigs you should have for extra cash. It's like, no, I should have just the 1 gig to be able to pay why do I need 6 jobs to pay my rent? It doesn't make any sense. And it's kind of been accepted as the norm, and it's crazy. It's unsustainable. So I don't know. So I think part of that is just frustration boiling over, and people are super sensitive. If you were a regular New Yorker, they were saying New York's going to fall apart. And I remember I was watching Jesus and Miro. I don't know if you know them.
Yeah.
Right, and there were somebody asked them that, and Miro was just like, if you think this is going to make New York fall apart, you're not a New Yorker and you don't belong here. And I remember Seinfeld famously had a whole thing. Some club owner sold his club and moved to Miami and said New York's falling apart. And Seinfeld's like, do you remember the 70s when there were no leash laws? You were literally dodging shit in the streets.
Yeah.
And he's right. You were literally dodging shit in the streets. Yeah. It was terrible. And it's like, no, New York will be fine. It'll be fine.
Okay, yeah, because maybe, I don't know why there are these stories coming out, because it's all about Chicago too. You don't live here, but it's similar where stories are coming out like, oh, New York is so horrible and people are leaving and they're moving upstate and they can't take it anymore and what's going to happen. But what's the vibe there like?
I mean, when they first were saying like, oh, you can release it, people were just out on the streets partying. People are fed up. People are just tired, especially like you got yourself vaccinated twice, you got yourself boosted twice, and people are like, oh yeah, I got COVID, I'll sit home for 2 days and I'll be fine. Like that seems to be most of the, so a lot of people still wear masks. And I mean, obviously it's one of those, you go to Broadway, they ask everybody to wear masks. It's like, okay, yeah, a lot of people in a confined space. I get it. But, you know, I have to say, like, since the mask thing came out, I haven't had the flu. So I'm like, you know, if everybody's going to talk about it doesn't work, it kind of does, because I've been on the bus a lot of times and haven't gotten the flu. But before, when I was taking the bus, somebody was always hacking or sneezing or snotting on you, you know, 2 seats behind you. And in a half an hour, you caught 30 freaking viruses and then you were sick for 2 weeks, you know? So it's all to be taken with a grain of salt, I think.
You know, also, I know some people who from here who've gone to New York and they say it's incredible. So they don't say, well, is it dangerous or what's going on? They're like, no, it's fine. Nothing happened. And they didn't see anything or.
It's, you always hear, it's funny to me, because I remember years and years ago, when I was in Croatia, a cousin of a cousin was telling me she had a friend in Chicago and said that in Chicago, you don't go into the city in the daytime because you'll just get killed. And if you're a woman, you'll get raped.
Okay.
And I remember sitting there going like, I don't think that's right. You know, like, no, it's true. You just don't leave the house. You drive through a car and I'm just like, no, I don't think that, you know, you have these people, these stories built up and they freak out. If somebody approaches them, I mean, I had an ex-girlfriend and her mom went to the city. They're from Massapequa, Long Island. And Massapequa, Long Island is a suburb, some, I don't know, like 40-minute drive out from Manhattan. And she was a lady who never went to the city much. And she went to the city, a friend of her bought her tickets and they went to see a play together. And she was very stereotypical Leave It to Beaver mom, you know, really sweet, not very world savvy or whatever. And so she comes back and my friends happen to be over. And, you know, we're all kids from like Queens, you know. We said, how'd it go? So Mrs. Stabler, how'd it go? And she go, oh, it was lovely, but we went on a train station. And there was a guy there playing guitar and he had a bucket there for money. And everybody was walking by like this happens every day.
And it does.
And we were all kind of looking at each other like, that's because it does happen every day. Yeah. It's New York. It's a New York minute. It's like, yeah, people are hustling. Everybody's hustling, trying to just make some cash and live another day. Well,
have you ever lived in Manhattan?
I've never lived in Manhattan. No, I've lived in Queens.
Okay.
Queens is the easternmost borough. So it's a little bit of a suburban kind of thing. But, you know, there, depending on which part of Queens, you catch a train to Manhattan. So it's not that far away.
And so are you from Croatia originally?
Yes. Yes.
Because I went there in 1995.
Oh, nice.
During the war. Okay. So
was
that was my experience. During the war.
Oh.
On vacation.
Well, technically it was just right after the war in Croatia, wasn't it? The war had transferred to Bosnia at that point.
No, it was Croatia because I was supposed to go to Dubrovnik and they bombed it. And so then
was it 95?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's right.
I went to Hvar. So I met some people because I lived in Japan. I met some people from Slovenia. I went to Slovenia and they were going to vacation in Croatia and I had to get a special visa. And then they looked at my passport like, what the heck are you doing here? And everybody, most people in that area were from the Czech Republic.
Right.
And people were seriously, they thought I was CIA or something. But Croatia is a beautiful country other than the war part, but it was incredible.
It's absolutely gorgeous all over the place. Yeah.
How old were you? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I spent my years there. It's weird. My parents basically did a bunch of stuff. I was born in West Germany, back when it was West Germany. Yeah. Spent 10 months in Croatia, came to the US, was in the US for 6 years, moved back to Croatia, spent 7 years in Croatia, and then moved back to the US halfway through 7th grade. So that was a huge culture shock. So, you know, I had the experience of the 70s in the US, and then of the late 70s and most of the 80s in Croatia, and then back to the US.
Why did your family move so much?
you know, hair up the ass. I don't know.
Okay, because so it wasn't like military or whatever. Not CIA.
No. It was basically looking for work.
Okay.
One of the big problems for my dad, why he didn't stay there, is my dad was very, when the communists came in power, my grandfather was a baker and he had a bakery. And when the communists came in power, they took the bakery away from my grandfather and basically made him be a baker for a local army base.
Wow.
And that's where he worked.
Okay.
And so they came into their house, they pretty much took everything and just left, you know, my dad's family with almost nothing. So it was like grandma, grandpa, 3 kids,
Right.
you know, a 5-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a newborn. You
In
know,
Croatia.
In Croatia in 1945, which was part of the former Yugoslavia. So my father vowed he would never join the Communist Party. And, you know, it's not like everybody liked the Communist Party, but it was just one of those things. Well, if you're going to get a job somewhere, if you're going to advance in the workplace, you kind of need to join the party. So it was a little bit almost like you need a library card to read in the library. You know, people didn't take the communism part that seriously. It was just, well, what else are we going to do? And my father, he was too stubborn about it. He refused to do it. So he had to basically move out of the country if he was going to make money.
Yeah, I mean, when I was in Eastern Europe in '95, I met some. Yeah, I spent some time in Romania, and I heard the same story. They had some kind of, you know, small business. It was taken away from them.
Yeah.
All of them living in a tiny apartment, and their lives sucked, basically.
Yeah. Oh, the tariffs, for example, were incredible. My father bought a car in 1980 or 1981, and he paid enough tariffs on it to buy 3 more cars. And he went and he bought an Opel because he always loved GM from being in the US in the 70s. So he went to Germany, visited his brother who's living in Germany, and bought an Opel and came back home. And then when he brought it across the border, he had to pay the tariffs. And like I said, he bought basically 3 more cars.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, you know, okay, sorry. Well, first of all, when I've seen your acting, it's really incredible. I've seen you in a couple shorts. One was Coco Van, and
Coco Van, yes. Yeah. My friend Christy wrote that. Yeah.
That was really good. And then the other one was Apartment something, and you were somebody's boss.
Yes, Conversations in Apartment 3A. Yeah.
Right. And your acting is so realistic. And it reminds me of this German actor. I totally forgot his name, but he's a well-known German actor. And he was from East Germany when it was communist. And he actually spent like a year in jail, and it affected his acting, like in a good way. It made him see things a little differently. And I'm just wondering, you know, moving around and immigrating and being bilingual and so forth, has that affected your acting?
I think so. I think, I mean, I don't consciously think about it, but I feel like it's just given me so many different experiences to empathize with and to know, you know, what it is, like the immigrant struggle, the cultural differences, the, you know, quirky parents, the quirky relatives, you know, the communities and how they behave, and yeah, a lot of stuff to draw on, you know. And in a way, my brother and I are kind of like capsule kids, because family that's remained back in Croatia, they've kind of moved on and gotten very westernized. And so my brother and I think very much the same way about how like life was experienced and what life should be. And we didn't really fall for all the like trappings. He got a little more sucked into trappings because he's older than me, but I always kind of detested it.
You mean trappings of materialistic society?
Yes, correct. Like, because that became a huge thing. And I remember my cousin coming and visiting, and you know, he was asking me, he was like, "Oh, do you know what Bulgaria is?" And I was like, "I have no clue." He's like, "Oh, because he took me to, he wanted to buy something nice for my mom when he was here, and for my parents to thank them for letting them stay for a couple of weeks. And, you know, this is a fairly close cousin." And I was like, "Oh yeah, let me take you to Macy's in Manhattan." And we went to Macy's in Manhattan, and he started like bartering with the lady behind the perfume counter, you know, and she was just like a sweet, like older New York City Jewish lady, you know, from day one with the big hair. And she's like, "Oh, darling, darling, I really wish I could help you, but no, we can't bother. It's $65 for the perfume. You know, she's doing this whole thing. He's like, no. I give you 50. I give you 50, and then, you know, it is good, yeah? And he's doing this whole thing, and I'm kind of sitting there going like, no, Mickey, it's Macy's on Fifth Avenue. We don't barter here, man. So, yeah.
So how did you used to be a scientist, right?
Correct. R&D scientist, yep.
So how long did you do that for?
Basically since college up until 2007, 8, something like that.
And then what happened?
Well, I kind of got fed up at my job. And my wife and I bought an old house right before the market exploded in 1999. And it was an old, dilapidated house that we got first sold, basically. And we knew it had to be remodeled. And so, you know, both of us, you know, struggling, salary. It was one of those things where one year we saved money and went on vacation, and one year we saved to do something around the house or to the house and that kind of stuff. So basically got to the point after some, you know, 8, 9 years where my wife was actually earning enough for both of us to, so that I didn't have to. And I was like, you know what? Why don't I quit work? I'm really fed up with what's going on there and just rebuild the house. So I left work.
And where was that house?
It's the house I'm living in right now.
Okay.
Yeah. Knocked the house down. What happened was we put an addition on the side of the house, a 2-car garage with a master suite on top. And we kind of waited until we saved more money. And then, like I said, I knocked the old house down to the basement, expanded it 10 feet to the back, and then built everything up. And that was my job. So, you know, I did the framing, the plumbing, the electrical, all that stuff.
And then how did you get into acting?
That's, you know, it was time for me to like go back to work because most of the house was done. There's still like some things that I need to do that I've been dragging my feet on. I kind of got burnt out because when you work on your house by yourself, you'll just get burnt out, kind of just lugging all the stuff. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to try this. I've always thought about it and I've never done it. Because I mean, I was a science major in college, but I also got a minor degree in fine arts.
I mean, that's literally right brain and left brain.
Yeah. So I had like I said, I had a BS in bio. And I got like I said, a minor degree in fine arts. So I, you know, painting and drawing and sculpting. I really love sculpting. I realized I adore 3D work, and that's probably why I loved building the house. Just, you know, doing things. So I said to my wife, I said, I want to try this, and she said, okay, yeah, give it a try. And I signed up for a class, and I remember turning to her and I said, if this is crunchy granola shit, I'm just walking out and I'm not coming back. Pardon my language. Yeah. If this is crunchy granola, I'm coming. I'm just going to leave. But I happened to find a school, the Barrow Group, and they were very, very grounded acting school. And they were just basically like, acting is just being, you know, just be yourself and read as yourself, kind of like do that. And so I really loved the approach, and I just didn't look back. And, you know, started doing improv comedy, took a bunch of classes at UCB.
What's UCB?
United Citizens Brigade. It's the improv school that was started by Amy Poehler, Matt Walsh, and a couple other people. I forget their names right now. And they had a school here in the city, and I think they still have the one on the West Coast in LA. You know, did stand-up routines and just acting and just hustling and writing my own stuff. And like I said, loved it, didn't look back.
Oh, by the way, somebody texted me. These are people are asking questions. Somebody texted me and said, so are you going full on New York, Hollywood? They're asking me. Okay, just FYI for people. No, I'm not. You know that I've done radio stuff or media stuff for many years. And I met Tomo in a class I'm taking out of New York City. It's about pitching your TV class. So I've met some interesting people there. I'm just expanding you, everybody. I'm still doing media people. I interviewed a reporter, and I'm going to interview another one. So don't worry, everybody. So somebody's asking me that. No, I'm not going to move to LA or anything. Because it is really different, because I've done media for so many years. Basically Chicago media. So
Right.
So how did you learn how to act in such a real way? So for instance, sometimes when I see acting, especially in the US, it seems sort of exaggerated. And that's why sometimes I like to watch British stuff. I don't know why their acting is so dang good, but I can relate to it.
Yes. I mean, like I said, this school basically had just be yourself. And it's a lot of it has to do with just being comfortable in front of people or the camera. And that's the hardest one. And I mean, I remember first doing some things in class on camera and seeing myself, and I just wanted to crawl into a hole. Like, this is so awkward. I look so weird. It's kind of like, when they do the wedding videos and nobody knows what to say, and they're all just like, hi, and good luck to the groom and bride. And like, people just freak out. It was a little bit like that, but especially improv, you're going on stage. We go on stage once a month at least. And improv is like times you kill, and other times you bomb terribly, and it's just like, well, that's what it is. Stand up, you bomb, yep, that's what it is, and you just kind of get used to it, and you just go for it. And it's just a matter of just getting in character and just doing it.
When you do stand up and so forth, how do you get over the failure?
I think improv helped me with that a lot, because you're kind of making stuff up on the spot. And it's just, you just kind of shake it off. It's one of those like, well, you fell off the horse, get back up on the horse, go do it again. At least for me, it's just, I'm already putting myself out there with the chance of being embarrassed. And more often than not, especially because I do comedy, I'm going to do something that's very self-deprecating and embarrassing anyway. So if you call me out or something, I'm going to go with you and join with you to rip me apart. So bombing is just like, oh, okay. And, I know it's part of it. It bothers me if I thought I was prepared and then I screw up. Then bombing bothers me. Like, it's like I flubbed the line. I told something out of order. It's like, well, that's, and then I'm just like kind of beating myself up a little bit. It's like, you did screw up. But then you just go back up and do it. And don't expect to laugh.
But what's hard about the creative world is that there is a lot of rejection. So if you're doing stand-up, for instance, and somebody makes fun of you, you can just go with it. But what if you work so hard on something like some of those videos you've done, and then people are like, this is horrible. They're online saying this is horrible.
That's the hard one to accept, and it's the one you need to accept the most. You're not going to please everybody. It was a little bit of a eureka moment for me when I started doing the acting. It was one of these things where you pay to see a casting director and you pay to see an agent. And I remember, and this was very early on, I had just made a profile on one of the acting sites for myself. And I saw an agent, and I prepped my monologue, and the agent saw my monologue. And at the time, I didn't even have professional headshots yet. I had a friend who's a photographer. She took a bunch of shots of me, and she's like, I think this one's for you. This one's you. And my wife was like, this totally captures your personality. This one's totally you. I was like, okay, great. And I went in and I did my monologue for the agent. And he looked at me and he said, okay. And he's looking at my headshot, and he's literally like, okay. So in this monologue, you're basically talking to somebody. I said, yeah, it's like a Narcotics Anonymous meeting. And he's like, okay, yeah, that was good. Okay, I got it. And then he holds up my phone. He says, what the bleep is this? And I'm kind of looking at him like, what? He says, you look like a drunk guy leaving a wedding. And I started laughing because it kind of did, because in the photo I have my glasses on, and they're the, progressive ones that tint when it's sunlight, and I have a jacket over my shoulder, and I got a big cheese grin. I was smiling confidently. And when he said it, I was like, I do look like a drunk guy leaving a wedding, so I'm killing myself laughing. And he just berates me and tells me, he's like, if you're going to be taken seriously, you need to get real professional headshots. What is this? Blah, blah, blah. Do yourself a favor, blah. I was like, okay. On my way home, on the bus ride home, I'm just distraught. And I'm just like, I'm wasting my time. Let me just doll up my resume and get back into corporate. That's what I do. I come home, my wife's like, what happened? And I tell her. And like I said, I'm just going to pull out my resume. She's just like, you just started. Please don't give up. Give it a chance. So okay, literally the next night, I'm seeing a casting agent. And she worked at the time on Louis on FX. And she used to be the casting agent for Gotham on Fox. Real nice lady, super sweet. And, you know, you're supposed to prepare a scene. You go up, you do the scene. And I'm feeling stupid, super self-conscious now about this headshot. Drunk guy leaving the wedding. So I'm trying to kind of diffuse the situation. I hand her my headshot and I said, feel free to make fun of it. She looks at it and she gets like almost offended. Says, what are you talking about? I love this headshot. This headshot has so much personality. This is possibly my favorite headshot I've seen in like a week. And like, I'm just like stunned. You could have knocked me over with a feather. I sit down, I go through my scene, and I'm pondering now this encounter that was literally the next night on my way home going, what the hell's just happened? And then it hits me. I'm like, oh, this business is dating. We're just dating. You know, sometimes I might get a cup of coffee. Sometimes I might get lunch. Sometimes I might get dinner. And sometimes ultimately I might go home with somebody. But we're just dating. And if somebody doesn't like me, it's not because I'm a terrible person. It's because either I don't fit it, my acting wasn't what they were looking for or whatever. It's like, oh, and that one was a huge to help with the disappointment. It's like, well, we're just dating. Not everybody's going to like me. Because I mean, I've had casting agents call me over and over and over again on the strength of one performance. And others look at me and they're like, yeah, you suck. And I just go, yeah, all right, whatever. And just thank you, have a good day. And
but maybe it's because of your experience, but some people really have trouble with rejection, and they take it so personally because it's a piece of them going out there.
Yes. I think if I was in my early 20s, my ego would have been too fragile for it. If I was doing this, I definitely would have taken me a long time to get over that part of it. If somebody pointed it out and I came to that realization, that would have helped. But, you know, I think in my early 20s, I just wouldn't have had the maturity for it, the emotional maturity for it. But, you know, I'm a middle-aged guy. I'm starting, and at this point, I'm just like, well, okay, I'm okay with this.
So what kind of advice do you have for people who are going through that rejection or they want to do something creative?
Just keep at it. Just keep at it. You just have to keep at it. I mean, it's kind of like learning how to do a backflip. If you try it once and you land on your head, well, are you just going to give up? You're going to take your lumps, and that's just, it's just, and from everything I've seen, from everybody I've seen, it's just a matter of persistence. And there are so many different jobs you could get as an actor to kind of keep your skills there that people don't know about, that I found out about as I was going, that will help you, but you just have to keep going out there. Just keep doing it.
Well, is it hard to get an acting job? Because it seems like there's so many people out there wanting to act and also putting stuff online.
It is. It's hard because there's so many people for so many roles, and it's not an easy thing. But if you work on basically, you know, it's a cliche, you work on your craft, but it's true. If it's coming to you like it's not a big deal and you can memorize lines quickly and you can kind of figure out the characters quickly and you can have the mindset set up quickly and you just keep doing it, it's just a matter of time before somebody sees you and says, oh, hey, you're doing well. I like your stuff. Let me represent you. Let me recommend you to this producer. Let me recommend you to this director. Let me, you know, whatever it is. Because the big comparison is having come from the corporate world. Because everybody's like, always like, what movie have I seen you in? You know, it's like, well, are you a CEO? No.
Right.
You know, the guys in the movies, your Tom Cruises and you know, Chris Pratt and these guys, those are CEOs.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
They're the big actors. You know, you're not even middle management. You know, you're not even a guy in the background. So that's basically that. So to get those big roles, the big money paying roles, you're a CEO. Sure, it's just for this one movie. But if you get big enough and, you know, you're getting these RDJ contracts, you know, where he made $75 million for a movie, he never has to act again.
No, unless he wants to buy like $100 million house or something.
But even then, I mean, for all the Marvel movies, he probably made $250 million.
Yeah.
So
That's a good, that's a
yeah,
good way of putting it though, that, people assume that acting has to be big time A-list. And there are a lot of people throughout acting history who were character actors, and they were so busy. Like when people die and you look at their Wikipedia, they were in like 500 things.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I know actors who have had steady gigs on just about every show that's filmed in New York City. They're doing well. They're good actors. They do stage, they do voiceover, they do, whatever they do. Standardized patient work, standardized law client work, animation, all kinds of work you can do. But they just keep plugging away, plugging away, plugging away. And then maybe one day you hit.
Well, do you need an agent or management to make it?
You technically don't. But for you not to need it, you basically have to make your own content a la Kevin Smith, right? Kevin Smith is like a really respected filmmaker at this point. And it came about because he shot a video with some friends at a quickie stop in New Jersey, and that was such a hit that people can't deny him. And the minute somebody sees that, all the representation lines up. Managers want to do for you, agents want to, lawyers want you, they all want you. And that's the issue, because part of the industry is with agents and representation. They love to represent you, but if you do crap work, it reflects poorly on them.
Yeah.
So unless you have some serious proof, so you'll have people that without representation will book gigs on TV shows regularly. And then eventually somebody will be like, oh, okay, you were on how many shows? All the shows in New York City. I'll represent you now.
Because they have a track record. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
So wait, do you have representation?
I do not.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and then also, how do you, what do you feel when you're acting? Like, so for instance, I always say for instance, but I find it hard just to be myself in life because we have to play so many roles. So I feel like acting is it would be very exhausting because I have to be fake in real life. Then I have to fake it again. What's it like?
I've been able to separate it as just a job. Like, here we go, we're going to perform. We're going to do this. I've always been a performer since I was a kid, so kind of it's a secondary skill. And one of the things when I was a kid, I was averse to confrontation a lot, even though I got into way too many scraps. Part of it is because dysfunctional family at home, lots of fighting, all of that. But as a kid, Croatia, for a small country, has a lot of different areas with a lot of different dialects and things like that. And I'd have family in different parts. So for the summer, I'd go stay with an aunt over here, or I'd go stay with my grandmother over there. And because I was a very little scrawny kid, I was always a target for bullies. So what I used to do is try to blend in as quickly as possible. And so I would pick up the colloquial mannerisms, accents, everything, and just kind of blend really fast. And I think that's part of the reason why I can do the acting stuff, because I'm just like, oh, I'm just here for now. And then I'm going to go back to being, the Nimrod that I usually am. Yeah.
But back then, I doubt you were thinking, oh, this is going to be useful someday, because sometimes when we go through, that's the great thing about getting older. Is sometimes we go through things, we think it's the end of the world. Then we look back and we're like, oh my gosh, thank God I went through that, because now it's helping me in this new situation.
Absolutely. 100%. Like all these things that, it's funny. I just saw Neil deGrasse Tyson was talking about how when people are in school and they're taking math classes and trigonometry, and they're like, I'll never use this again in my life. And he pointed out correctly, it's like, no, you might not use that ever again in your life. But what this has done is help you think and figure out solutions in a different way, which you don't realize later in life is going to help you, because your brain pathways are going like, oh, well, what if I do this and this and this, and I'll come to this, and there you go.
Yeah, that's exactly what I tell the students I teach at Columbia College, and sometimes they'll say, why do I have to take such and such? Because they're art majors, different creative arts. And I'll say, because it's going to help you later, because it literally does stuff to your brain. That's
Yeah,
why education helps, because it really helps your brain to be open and think new ways. And
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I said it before, if I won the lottery, I would just take classes in college for like, I wouldn't bother with like the diplomas or anything. I would just take the courses, be like, well, this is really interesting. Let me study this.
yeah.
You know, it's yeah, totally.
So why did you become a scientist instead of going some creative way initially?
It's the immigrant path, isn't it? My parents worked all the time, 16-hour days, that kind of stuff. And so my job, because I was smart, I used to get good grades all the time, was to study and make something of myself. And the idea was for me to go to med school. So I went to college, I was pre-med. And senior year of college, my health was really bad. I was a terrible asthmatic. Had terrible sinus polyps. It was just, I had a rough time of it. And I remember thinking, like, if I go to med school, the stress is just going to kill me. Like, I can't handle this. And then I saw like the people that got into med school, and it's because, they were kind of kissing ass with the professor and giving them free blood work and that kind of stuff. And I was just, wait a minute, dude, your grades were abhorrent. They're horrible in class. But he got into med school, and other people that were like, literally almost like straight A's didn't get into med school.
Wait, what kind of med school is this? Northwestern Med School is not like that. I live near there.
I don't know. And I mean, my original trajectory is like, what I wanted to do was like enroll in Rockefeller University in the city and do an MD PhD program, because I really liked the science part of it more. And then I remember thinking, I was like, you know what, I'll probably make a great doctor, but I'll never have a family, because I know, OCD, I will obsess with my patients and they will always come first.
Right.
And, wife, kids, anybody else, it's like, yeah, well, here, I have money. Here, take the money.
But that's interesting that you had that insight about yourself.
Yeah, I mean, that was, if I talk to a therapist, I'm sure we're like, well, maybe that was just fear talking. Fear of school wasn't, no, not really. School never, intimidated me that way. I was just trying to think, and I was just like, this is going to be. And at the time, I had a girlfriend, and we were going through like a breakup, and I was just thinking about like, she was very materialistic, and I was so not there, and I was just like, all of these things like popped into my head. It's like, I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to be a target of every like person that wants a comfortable life. It's just like, I don't, and I'll get married because I'll be like, oh my God, yeah, you're great, you're wonderful, and then just get lost at work and just demands at home. And
that's so funny that you've envisioned all this stuff.
I'm a planner. So I mean, that's part of my problem, because I'm always like, what if? So sometimes it makes me a killjoy, but I'm a planner.
So you became a scientist because it's practical and it was solid, and then now you're living the dream because you're acting and being creative.
Correct.
And then can you discuss what you're writing, what you're working on?
A couple of ideas that I'm writing. One is I'm working on a pilot script, basically loosely based on my experiences going into acting as a middle-aged guy and just everything encountered. Another script I'm working on is about a bunch of retired porn stars that make a podcast that's basically audio porn. And
are you serious?
Yeah. So, because I was actually, Holly and I are going to work on this together.
Holly from our class, Holly
Harper, because we talked about it when she was on the podcast once, and we talked about how funny it would be, and just these old people, with oxygen tanks, but their voices are still good.
Did you know Holly Harper before our class?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. She actually, we took the class before. She invited me to like check it out, because she has a sketch troupe in New York that she's been with for 10, 12 years that she started. And I've done sketches with them like 2 or 3 times. So that's where we met.
So, well, she'll probably be a future guest on this, but okay. And so then you're working on something, and then that sounds like an interesting idea. And then anything else that you can talk about?
Yeah, just a couple ideas. One is an idea about like a international, like kind of super secret spy agency that my buddy and I cooked up way back in college, and we were going to make a comic book out of it. And so I was sitting on this idea for years and years and years, and I was like, oh, let me write a script for it as a movie. And I started doing it as a movie, and then I thought about it, it'd probably be, especially, the streamers kind of changed everything. I was like, you know what? No, this could be like a TV series, a good 7-8 episode arc, because that's what the streamers do. So I'm working on that. And then one that's kind of like a sci-fi one that's based back during the Jurassic era, and that people were living on a planet in between Mars and Jupiter. And with the idea is that they were kind of forest rangers for the dinosaurs, and they kept poachers from coming to Earth to like hunt dinosaurs.
Okay.
And then the planet blows up, and that's what makes the asteroid field in our solar system. So kind of trying to tie that in, basically a sci-fi series like that. That's what I'm working on.
Well, what's your workday like now that you're not doing the 9 to 5 in a cubicle or whatever? Or in a lab?
Yeah, in a lab. Well, it's basically, sending myself out for auditions, that kind of stuff. Working on my writing, taking care of stuff around the house, doing a lot of cooking, working around the house, working out, trying to stay in shape for, as long as I can.
Yeah. How do you, what's an audition experience like? I know you gave me a couple examples earlier, but how do you find these auditions anyway?
Well, there's all these websites that you go on. I freelance with a talent manager. He actually sought me out when COVID hit, I guess because a lot of his stable were moving out of the city. So he was just like, you want to freelance? I was like, sure. So you get basically an audition sent to you, or you put out for audition and then they reply. Everything nowadays is more or less self-tape. I haven't had an live audition. I think I had one earlier this year for a stage production, or two of them actually. But it's basically, trying to get it right and just trying to get the feel right. And people always say it's so hard, but it because you look at it and you're just like, would you buy this? And be like, this person's awful. I often find myself like, what am I doing with my eyes? Why are my eyes half closed? Like I'm drunk, it's like, okay, I gotta let me try this again, And sometimes it can be frustrating because there's a freight line near my house and I'll be doing on my take and I'm nailing it. And then the horn goes off and, in my take, I'm just all of a sudden dropping all kinds of F-bombs and cursing. And so they're funny outtakes for like later on.
Yeah,
but the ones that are nerve wracking for me, and that's the one that I haven't figured out yet how to calm myself, is like when I get the big ones for like a TV show or something, and the heart is racing and it's like, oh, this is big stakes now, and just trying to settle myself down and just be relaxed. And I had one for the Blacklist actually earlier in the year, and that was the most relaxed I was at the time. And the casting agent paid me a nice compliment, and she was like, why haven't we seen you before? I was like, I guess I didn't fit the part before. I don't, so it was kind of like, okay. But especially when they're high stakes, it's very nerve wracking. Like my heart hammers, and they have all these like meditation techniques that I haven't availed myself of yet, but it's kind of like, okay, let me just try and calm myself and just do the best I can.
I think of athletes when I think of high stakes situations, because think about, 50,000 people watching you and you've got to get that touchdown or whatever.
Yes. And I find actually I perform best if I'm in a panic and I'm late. And I'm running and I rush and I get in there and then I just got the sweat cleaned off and I come in, and every time that happens to me, it hasn't happened a lot, but every time it has, I killed the audition. I might not have gotten a part, but I killed it. Like everyone in the room either was like, that was great, or laughing their heads off, or whatever it is. And it's just kind of like, oh, okay, I guess I just needed a little extra adrenaline to help me focus,
Well, it's also, you don't have time to worry or think or analyze because you're in such a hurry. So you just go for it and you're
exactly.
in the zone.
Exactly. That's why cold reads are my favorite.
Okay.
Because it's like, I got no time to prep. I don't have the time to think about it. Just like, let me just give you my best read and here we go.
And then you mentioned streamers. What do you think about changes in the, in the film business or the media business?
I guess good, because it's being a little more democratized.
Yeah.
All this technology. I mean, YouTube, Instagram. You could put out a whole series by yourself with not a lot of money, and you have good acting and you have good writing. People will watch it. And does that mean fame and fortune? No. But I think, and you touched on this earlier, I think that's the mistake here in the States, and why British acting is so good.
Really good.
British acting as an actor, that's a job. It's not a flighty, crunchy granola thing. It's a fair trade. And it's something that people have practiced in the UK, since Shakespeare. Like, oh, I'm going to school, I'm going to be an actor. Well, all right, very good. I think they look a lot less down upon that in the UK than they do here. Where here it's just like, oh, you just want to be young and famous and hot and all this crap. And it's like, no, I want to act. I mean, sure, you're hot, it helps. Well, why wouldn't it? But, I think it's just, and I think the streamers, like I said, everything gets democratized. I think the streamers are great because of the whole no commercial thing, which they're all going to change the model and come back to commercials.
They
It's
might
kind of
change,
like, it's kind of like cable was. Cable used to be, every channel was supposed to be without commercials. And then next thing you know, every channel had commercials, except for HBO, and you had to pay $15 a month for it. It's like, wait a minute, what the hell happened? Why am I paying for cable if I'm getting commercials? So it's just going to be a cycle, and soon enough, someone's going to find some other way to do it. But the nice thing about the streamers that I like is so many more stories will be told now. Because you have so many more people just going like, well, that's a good idea. Why don't we put that out there? And you can access international stuff. That's great. Look at Squid Game. Look at, Money Heist, the Spanish TV show. Excellent shows, great acting, great writing, great direction, all of them great. And it's like, okay, everybody's seeing this now. And I think there's a lot of stories to be told this way, and a lot of people are going to have more chances to tell their stories.
The only thing is, making a living, because some people say now there's so many people getting into it's harder to make a living. But then I'm thinking, but back in the day, not many people were allowed to make a living anyway from acting.
Exactly.
And not allowed, but it was hard.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was such a gated community. You can only do this if you have connections with me. The casting couch, all that other crap. It's like, why is that necessary? But it's, if you believe that your stuff is good, well, guess what? Rent a camera. You can go down to B&H Audio in the city and rent professional gear, get together with some friends, have pizza and beer and drinks for everybody, and shoot your film. You can, if you need a lot of time, take a week off, shoot your film. But you'll be able to do it if it's a good idea, and people will like it. That's what the festivals are for. Send it to the festivals. Yeah. Now, a lot of it is, well, people don't have money. Yeah, but if your stuff is that good, people will notice it in the festival.
Yeah, that's true. And also, what you mentioned being hot. Does that really matter a lot? I mean, how before in media in Hollywood, you had to look a certain way, and there weren't a lot of channels or opportunities. Right. And now, so what do you think about that right now?
I think cable has helped with that immensely. Paul Giamatti in Billions, he'd never get a network job because he just doesn't look it. But it's like, no, that's what a DA looks like. A DA looks like Paul Giamatti, not like, Brad Pitt or Hugh Jackman. This is what a DA looks like. Does it help? Of course it helps, because I know a girl, she got, there's this TV show called Upload. I don't know if you've seen it.
I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it, but I've heard of it. She
was in a UCB class with me. Okay. 6'1" blonde.
And that's the one on Prime, right? Is that Upload? Is that
on Amazon? Yeah, correct. Yeah. Okay. And she was also on a TV show with Rosario Dawson on USA, a series. I forget the name of it. But she was just the nicest woman, funny as hell. Like I said, she was a 6'1" blonde that was just stunning. And it was just like, well, you know what? I can't be angry at you. You're nice, you're talented, you're funny, you deserve all the success you want.
Yeah.
But if I walk into a room and a 6'1" blonde young woman walks into a room, all eyes are going to her.
Mhm.
And that's just the human condition,
I love when attractive people are really nice, because then you're rooting for them. They're not using it against you, and they're not using it in a mean kind of way.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I've seen people use it to their advantage and forget the rest. And I'm talking about the media here in Chicago. I'm not even talking about Hollywood.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But you know what? It happens in the corporate world too. You're a tall guy. You don't even have to be that good looking. But you walk in at like 6'4", 5" and slim, and everybody just goes gaga for you. And you're probably going to make CEO, or VP in record time because you're 6'4", 6'5".
Even in the 21st century, it's like that?
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, okay.
For sure.
Because I've seen some heads of companies and it sort of changed.
There's always exceptions to the rule, but when you walk into these places, all these guys are like 6'3" and up. They're all like ex-athletes, or at least have the look of an ex-athlete. They might have never touched the ball in their life. Yeah. But it's just that commanding presence. So everybody sees somebody who's 6'5", is like, oh, this guy really knows his stuff. He could be a moron, but okay, you guys promote him, why not?
And then what are the things you learned in the corporate world that have helped you in this creative world?
I think not to take rejection seriously. That's the whole thing. Because someone's always going to be a blowhard and come and try and like rain on your parade. But it's just like, okay, that's fine. We don't have to do that.
And how would you describe the corporate world? What's it like?
The corporate world, when you are a peon, is fun.
Why is that?
Because, we were all in the lab, a bunch of people in their 20s, after work partying, softball league, drinking, getting silly, sometimes go on vacation together. It was a lot of camaraderie and just nonsense all day long.
Was that in Manhattan or New Jersey, or where was that?
No, this lab was actually in Westchester.
Okay. Wow, that's fancy.
Yeah. And so this was Bayer. I used to work for Bayer Medical Diagnostics. Okay. And we had a blast. It was just a bunch of young people, all day long, their jokes flying and just ripping on each other. And it was just a lot of fun. And then you work your way up, and next thing you know, you're 4 levels up and you have 4 people reporting to you. And it's just like, everything is just an unending nightmare of paperwork and trying to get work done. So that's what it is. What happens is they dangle the management carrot in front of you. You start making a little bit more money now. You're not carefree like before, where you just have a task, finish it, go home. Now you're responsible for things, and they work you to your bones. They literally, like, you were here 12 hours? Oh, all right, good. At least you got the work done. I was literally quoted, I was asked by somebody, how long will it take you to get this work done? I said, well, if me and Brian come in on separate shifts and, work, our 8 hours, so we basically have a 16-hour shift all day, 2 months. Can you get it done in 3 weeks?
Sounds like Star Trek.
Yeah. It was literally like that. And I literally looked at the guys like, did you hear anything I said? Like, literally, I was speaking English. I'm pretty sure I was speaking English. But that's what it is.
Is that a corporate thing or a German thing? Is Bayer still owned by a German company? Okay.
No, that was a corporate thing. That was just people. Like everywhere, you have people that are trying to appear better than they are. So they're trying to lean on other people and make it look like they've made miracles happen, and et cetera, et cetera. Okay. And, so when you mentioned Star Trek, I was like Geordie LaForge. I didn't give you the say it takes 3 days because I knew it was going to take 2 hours to do it. I was just like, no, this is me busting my ass. Right. This is what it's going to take,
Yeah, and you're probably referring to that one scene where the original engineer was like, no, wait a second. No, you're supposed to say it's going to take like 20 hours.
Exactly. Yeah. When Scotty was a guest star on TNT.
Scotty, right.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm nerding out here. Nice.
So, but basically, it sounds like you're way happier in this acting situation.
Yeah, yeah, I am. It's currently it's not nearly as financially rewarding, I guess. But you know what? You meet so many people, and for the most part, most people are nice. Most people are creative, and you kind of get blown away with just how many creative, smart people there are in the art world, right? Because it's, stereotypes are everywhere, and you're just like, oh, yeah, they're good actors, but they're dumb as stuff. So it's like, no, they're really clever. You just don't know it because you haven't like spoken with them, that kind of stuff. So it's it's definitely more of a slog, but at the same time, it's more gratifying to me now.
But another stereotype is that people in that world are cutthroat and stuck up, et cetera, et cetera. Or am I just thinking that because I've been to Beverly Hills?
Oh, in the acting world?
Yeah. And yeah, in the creative entertainment world.
Yeah, but you know what? Everybody's being called out about that now. And the problem is, especially in New York City, and a casting agent said this to me once, said, the lovely thing about New York City is that everybody has a different job. You're an actor, you're a delivery guy, you're a postman, and she was a bi-coastal agent. She said in LA, everybody's an actor. Like you meet your barista and he's an actor and wants to push a script on you. You meet your postman and he's a writer and he wants to push a script on you. He's like, everybody's doing other work, but they're in the industry.
So the cliche is correct.
Yeah.
Wow. So, but New York is not like that. It's more a variety.
Well, yeah. And the other thing is in New York, because it doesn't have quite the population of actors that LA has had traditionally. So it's a small community. And you're literally like, and you think like two people that aren't connected at all. And then you go on Facebook or Instagram, you're like, oh, wait, you know such and such? How do you know such and such? And you realize that 50 people that you thought independently of each other, and they all kind of have met each other at one point or another.
I love New York for that reason, because it just, gosh, like I said to somebody else as well, people are so into connecting with other people. I think it's because a lot of people are not from there. Now you are from there, but I think it's because a lot of people go there and so they have to connect or else they're just going to wither.
Yeah. And the other thing, because the community is so small, everyone's going to find out if you're a douche. If you're like one of these cutthroat guys, everyone's going to be like, well, I don't want to deal with that person.
But I have seen douches get ahead.
Yes, unfortunately, yeah, because they're pushy and they have no conscience and no, scruples.
Now about the money thing, because some people say, okay, it's nice to have a nice lifestyle, or it's nice to make, decent money for what you're doing. And then some people say, life is too short, who cares? So now that you've experienced both, like not that you were well off, but just that you were making a decent, you're making decent pay for what you're doing. And now, you're not rolling in the dough. So right. What do you think about that? Like think about the difference of life satisfaction. I think this is my final question, unless you say something else that's compelling.
Uh-oh, the pressure's on.
I don't know.
Well, I mean, it doesn't affect me as much because financially I'm fine. And I think that's a big reason why a lot of my acting can be grounded, because it's not, hinging on me being able to eat tomorrow. So I don't know if I am the right person to ask that.
No, but still, there are people who are fine. They could retire right now, but they really like making decent money and flying in a plane to Paris or whatever.
Yeah, I like I said, I was never one for those trappings. I mean, they're nice, As I've gotten older, I realized, like, okay, yes, I'll enjoy a fancy stay at a fancy B&B and stuff like that, So I do enjoy it, but at the same time, it's like, well, what for? Do you, it's like, oh, I just got a $200,000 watch. Okay, I got a Fitbit that I got for $80. It tells me the time. It's kind of like I don't I don't get it, really. To me, and part of it has to do because my parents always worked around really wealthy people.
Mhm.
And I think, and they would always say like, oh, this person. So, because being the very working class immigrant, the psyche is, well, they make money, so they're smart. And what they do is correct. And it's like, no, that person probably drowned 3 people to get where they are. And, they're psychopathic. But you know what I mean? It's one of those. So a lot of that was at home, and this person is correct because they're rich. And I'm like, no, that's stupid. I've never heard anything stupider in my life. So I think part of that was my rebellion against like all this money. It's like, oh, who gives a hoot?
Well, especially in New York, because you guys see such incredible wealth over there, and you're in a small area. So the people who are living in Manhattan who have a private car and stuff, that's because they're super rich and it's right in front of you. And then if you don't have that, you're taking the subway.
Yeah.
And
I mean, for the most part, New York has always been like, nobody cares. Who cares? And that's why you'll see actors who are not in the Hollywood life will move to New York, because they'll walk down the street and somebody will be like, hey, you, what's going on? It's like, oh, hi, how you doing? And that's it. And nobody bothers with them, Maybe a paparazzi will take a picture, but for the most part, actors that aren't into the life, they move to the East Coast. Or, like Bruce Willis and Demi Moore raised their kids on a farm in Idaho or Iowa, wherever it was, Idaho, I think. And it's like, yeah, it's like, okay, you're not into the party scene. And they're always like, oh, they're taking pictures of me. Why are you at the club? Of course they're taking pictures of you. It's their job.
Right.
Why don't you have a party at home? You have money.
But I mean, in New York, one thing I noticed is that if you're wealthy there, I'm not talking about acting, just if you're wealthy, you can have a really nice, clean life. And if you're not, you don't have a clean life. I mean, clean, like no rats, no dirt, alleys are filled with garbage or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, people like to say New York's a very dirty city that way. So
well, it's better than it used to be. I mean, gosh, because I went there in the 80s and early 90s. Ugh, it was bad.
No. New York City has cleaned up a lot. It's true. It's one of those things where people make do. Especially kids, because everybody's like, oh, for my kids. Like, kids don't know any better. Unless you take them and put them in rich camp and then bring them home. And then they're like, what the hell was going on here? Yeah. They don't know any better. So for the most part, it's just, as long as you're making do and you're living an honest life, it doesn't really matter.
Oh, I forgot I was going to ask. I was asking you about comedy. Is comedy your preferred medium?
It's the one that comes easiest to me. So it is, in a way, yes. But I do love a very good drama. One of my favorite plays I did was a comedic play, but I had a big monologue in it where I just bawled my eyes out. So that was like every night in the performance, like a lot of just regret and guilt and all of that coming out. So that was
how do you generate that?
You know what? I'm not one of these actors that are emotionally available, that could cry on command. It's just the script touched me so. And I remember when I met the writer of the script, I thought a 70-year-old man wrote this, because there was just so much, just like I said, guilt and loss and in the play. And when I was reading it, I was crying my eyes out, and I was just like, I can't, like, big heavy sobs. And I was like, man, this guy's been through some stuff. Like, and then I met, and it was like a 30-year-old dude. And I was just like, whoa, dude, he's an excellent writer. And so it's still my favorite contemporary play. It's called The Whale and the Dog Star. And I guess part of the reason why it appealed to me, because it's about a bunch of astrophysicists in a lab and quirky characters. And so, yeah.
But wait, in terms of comedy though, what kind of comedy is funny to you? And actually, how are you funny? Like, how do people become funny? Because some funny is like, it falls flat.
I've always been a clown. I kind of inherited that from my mother. She was 5 of 10. So in order to get attention, she was.
So she was a Borg?
What's that?
Which cube was she in? A Borg? 5 of 10.
Yeah,
Okay. You're
yes,
telling me this story.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, exactly. 5 of
I'm
10.
just making these references because you were an R&D scientist. So
No. That's a great one. I love that. But so I have always been a clown, and I've always been the one ready to laugh and be funny, even when it's inappropriate, and especially when it's inappropriate. That's like the first thing that comes to my mind. If I go to a funeral, I'll find something funny, and then I have to pinch myself and look the other way so that I'm not like caught laughing at a funeral, that kind of stuff. So it's just that I've always been that guy I've always been a wise ass. It's one of the reasons why I always got my ass beat as a little kid, because I didn't know when to keep my mouth shut. Because I'd always have a quick, glib comeback for somebody. So that was always my thing. And it just went on into more and more comedy.
well, there are some comedians who went through a hard time, or they were isolated or something, and they used comedy as a way to work through it or to get along with people, etc.
For me, it was obviously a mechanism in tense or uncomfortable situations. Very much grown up. So that's the way I kind of kept my sanity.
Okay, well, this has been very interesting. It's like that show that guy, who's that guy? He seemed very serious, and he used to interview famous actors
Oh,
behind the
Charles
curtain or
Rose?
whatever. Yeah,
Charles Rose, or in the actor studio? Which one are
actor
you?
studio. Yeah, that guy. I
Oh,
feel like he's sort of done that, but yeah,
James Lifton.
that guy, right? And it's like I feel, yeah, it's like behind the curtain or whatever. But okay, so I guess I'll see you one more day in class, in this class we're taking, and also remember small people like me when you hit it big. And I want to be invited to some opening, like in LA or New York. Fine, I'll go to New York finally.
Oh, without a doubt.
This is on the record too. See,
without a doubt, Margaret. This is absolutely lovely. Thank you for having me. I really,
Thanks.
really appreciate this.
Okay, I'm gonna stop the stream right now. I'm